Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 718, Monday, March the 11th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, okay, so today we definitely want to get your votes in for Dumbass of the Week. I'll be checking this video in the comments section later for the votes for Dumbass of the Week. Obviously, we've had a lot of good contestants for this week. A lot of the same usual suspects we've had for the past couple of weeks, but it'll be a close match, I'm sure. But plenty of good candidates. So make sure you get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week on this video, the comments section on this video, and I will check that and we'll tally them up and announce the winner on tomorrow's video. Alrighty, so the first thing I want to talk about today is this story that popped up in the Boston Herald. The Boston Herald. By Peter Lucas. March 9th, Boston Herald, Peter Lucas. Title of the article, Don't Count Out Hillary in 2020. Yep. Now, he didn't just pull this article out of his rear end here. Someone's feeding him, and you're going to start seeing a lot of this type of thing as the Rotten Reverend Clinton deploys her strategy. This is exactly what she does. She's been getting asked in the last week or two. She's being asked, so have you shut the door completely? Are you definitely not running? And all these sorts of things. These are all totally, these are not just questions coming out of the reporters' heads, because none of these reporters want the Rotten Reverend Clinton to run again. The Democratic Party doesn't want her to run again, really. But this is Hillary's people. This is how they operate. This is a classic Hillary Clinton play. I can tell you right now, I can see right through it. She puts people up to Maggie Haberman and other people up to this type of stuff so that she orchestrates every bit of this. And this is orchestrated too. Okay, so this is an orchestrated article coming from some operative within the Clinton camp. So let's go through this article, and it's exactly what I've been telling you all along now for quite some time, that she is going to run a fake draft Hillary campaign. She's going to sit on the sidelines and allow these other Democrats to beat themselves to death. And then, at some point, when it looks like all these people are unelectable, then there's going to be a "Please Hillary, please run" draft Hillary campaign, which will be completely orchestrated. And in fact, it's already been orchestrated. It's happening now. This is why you're seeing in the last week or two these reporters asking the Rotten Reverend Clinton if she slammed the door on it, if she shut the door, if she's going to run, if she's absolutely not going to run. This is all calculated. This is all organized. This is all part of a Rotten Reverend Clinton plot. This is exactly how the Clintons operate. She's setting the stage for exactly what I have been saying. Now, let's take a look at Peter Lucas, who, by the way, is a lefty, hard lefty, and probably a Rotten Reverend Clinton supporter, would be my guess. So let's look at a couple key points from this article. Don't count out Hillary in 2020. So he says almost exactly what I've been saying. He says, all she has to do is watch the impending Democratic train wreck, stay viable, and they will come running to her saying, please run. The draft Hillary campaign. That's right. That's exactly what she's going to do. Also, in the article, Mr. Lucas takes digs at Bernie, as well as these other candidates who have already thrown their hat in the ring. And he, of course, says they're all too far to the left. Bernie's a socialist. Kamala not far behind. Pocahontas, chief spreading bull. She's obviously they're all trying to carve out the left position. They're all trying to be Bernie light. It's not going to work. Bernie is the only one who's actually going to be able to generate very much. Maybe Kamala Harris, because she's a black female. So this is pretty much where things are. The Right Reverend Clinton knows that if you end up with a Kamala or a Bernie Sanders, that she can easily come in and be the solution to their problem, which is that they have a socialist who is going to be the nominee if somebody doesn't do something. Now, how does Biden fit into this? Well, this particular writer also takes digs at Biden, and he points out what I pointed out a couple weeks ago, which is that Biden has already run 2 or 3 times before, and he has never even really cracked 1%. Never even cracked 1%. I mean, Biden is a gaffe master, and he doesn't even have to say anything new. Just the video clips that are available now for the things he said in the past are probably enough to doom him. Not to mention what he would say. I mean, every time the guy speaks, it's another gaffe. And the rotten Reverend Clinton knows this. And so he makes the point, and at the end of the article, he says, he kind of culminates the whole article at the end by saying, so as you can see, Hillary is the only sensible Democrat in the field. That's exactly how she's going to do it. She's going to say she's the only one that's really electable. She's going to come out and say, not even so much her, at first, it'll just be these people that she puts up to it. Her disciples are going to come out and say, we can't win with Bernie. We can't win. He's too far to the left. We can't win with the socialists. This is not going to work. We have to have someone else. And that leaves the Clinton. And the only thing standing in her way is Biden. And I'm sure that the rotten Reverend Clinton is working behind the scenes to cut Biden's legs out from underneath him as well, as we speak. And Biden knows this. Biden knows the rotten Reverend Clinton. He knows that the rotten Reverend Clinton wants to run again. He also knows that the rotten Reverend Clinton will cut his guts out without thinking twice about it to get to that power. He's aware of that. Which brings us to Biden. So what's Biden doing? Well, you've got people on the left out there saying, yeah, well, as soon as Biden jumps in, he immediately becomes the front runner. It'll be him and Bernie. Bernie will capture all the leftists, the socialists, and all the people on the far left. Biden will come in and he'll get the reasonable, sensible business Democrats and moderate Democrats and blue dog Democrats and all these people, and it will be a very close contest. But Biden will probably win out, right? This is kind of what's being pitched out there. But again, as I pointed out, as this liberal writer points out, Biden is a very weak candidate. And why hasn't he jumped in the race? Well, they're saying, well, he doesn't really need to jump in now because as soon as he jumps in the race, he knows he's going to be the number one. And he also knows he won't have any trouble with money because, he's got connections to a lot of money raising. Obama, he can tap into Obama's fundraising people because apparently Obama has encouraged Biden to run and has said, yeah, I can get all my people raise all that money for me. I can get you hooked up with these people. You can raise all that money as well. The corporate Democrats that support him and all these sorts of things. But for some reason, Biden, they say, is sitting out there just waiting for the right time. Now, I want to offer another point of view on this myself, which is not in this article and which I'm not hearing anybody talk about. Now, I'm just looking at this from a reality point of view. I'm thinking, okay, what's actually going on with Biden? Is he sitting there with various Democratic operatives, people from the DNC, and he's trying to plot all this out? What's probably happening in those conversations? Well, obviously what's happening in those conversations they are looking at this radical left group of Democrats that seems to have taken over the party, certainly in the Congress. And they are looking at that. They are looking to see how successful Bernie is, how much he's raising, 10 times as much money as anybody else. He's got all the energy on the left working for him. And we can see that it doesn't look like anyone who is so-called in the center, like a Joe Biden, is seeing all that much energy. Yeah, they're talking about the fact that if he enters, that he'll be first. But how do they know? And I think that this is what's holding Biden back. I think Biden has a real fear that he jumps into this race, and as soon as he does, instead of him launching right to the top of the pack and becoming, the top vote getter, that won't happen. That he won't be nearly as well received as a lot of people think he will be. In which case it will be a huge embarrassment. Because the thing about Biden that he and probably people around him know is that wherever he jumps in, whatever his numbers are, that's pretty much going to be his ceiling. He's not going to build very much more beyond that. What he'll be trying to do is hold on to that. He'll be trying to hold on to that and hope that the other leftists, Bernie and the other lefties, split the votes between themselves. It gives them lower numbers, and it gives him the appearance that he's the leading candidate, but only because he's running against so many people. If it were just a straight-up Biden versus Bernie and no one else running, he would probably be losing to Bernie. And I think that this is what they fear the most. Not just Biden, but the Democratic Party. They know that whoever they plug in to be the, electable or centrist or moderate type candidate, they better be able to do well and do better than Bernie. And they better be able to come right in and have, a good 35-40%, because they're not going to get much more than that. They're going to enter pretty close to their ceiling. It's going to answer all the people who don't want to go to the left in the Democratic Party. The leftover people, that's where they're going to go. And once that's done, the numbers will not go up much from there. You're going to enter pretty much, you're going to hit your ceiling within probably a couple of weeks. And there's a long way to go. And if you're a Joe Biden and you've got all this stuff in your past, and you've got, you're a gaffe master, and the people around Joe Biden know he's a gaffe master, it no longer even becomes about the money anymore, how much money you can raise. And what Biden doesn't want himself is to go out there, throw his hat in the ring, and then realize that he only shows up in the 20s, because he will be completely embarrassed. It doesn't matter how much he campaigns or where he goes, he will never quite be able to increase his ceiling by maybe a few points at best. He will never be able to get a big surge. Everybody knows him. They know who he is. They know what he's about and all this. So there's not much room for improvement. Wherever he jumps into the field, wherever his numbers are within the first couple of weeks, that's where they're going to be, and they can really only go down. And it's likely they will, because the more Biden talks, the lower his numbers go. And he's never gotten more than 1% at any time he's ever jumped in a presidential race. So he is a very, very weak candidate, quite honestly. He's a very weak candidate. He knows this, and he's terrified of being embarrassed. That's what I think. Biden doesn't want to jump into the race until he's got some real hard numbers that show that when he jumps in, he is going to rocket up into the high 30s, low 40s, and that he's going to have all the money, and he's going to get all the support from the media. He wants to know that he's got everything that can possibly be given to him for him to be able to compete in the current environment, which is the environment of the Democratic Party, is far left. He doesn't want to be embarrassed. And the longer you're around, the more opportunities you have to make an ass of yourself. And in Biden's case, that's especially true. That's another reason why he's laying back. And it may be just the fact that he really doesn't want to do it. I know one thing, he doesn't want to jump out there and get embarrassed. Imagine if he jumps out there and he only polls in the low 20s. And 2 or 3 weeks later, he's still in the low 20s. Then his numbers begin to drop and he ends up in the teens. He starts to fall down with the second-tier candidates. He's literally toast. I mean, is he going to continue that for the next, year, knowing good and well he can never really climb up the polls? He can only go down. And he'll be embarrassed. He may be forced to leave the race before the primaries even start, just because he came out so low compared to where they thought he would be. I don't think that Biden's totally sold on what everybody's telling him. I think that's a big reason why he's being very cautious about jumping in. And I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a decision at some point not to jump in. That wouldn't surprise me at all. He probably will, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. And I think there's a lot of people on the Right Reverend Clinton's team who are going to try to discourage him however way they can do it, because they want to see that Biden, I think all he does is complicate things. I don't think he'll stop Hillary, but he complicates things. What Hillary's people want to see is the far leftist freak show. They want to see Bernie and Kamala and Pocahontas all fighting for the far, far left. They want to see all this stuff, because that is what really is going to clear the path for Hillary to walk in and just drop right in and just take the nomination. So that's kind of my thoughts on what's going on here. But it's very interesting. We are seeing the beginnings of the campaign by the Right Reverend Clinton of her operation to ensure that she is the 2020 nominee. You're going to see a lot more articles just like this one in the weeks and months to come. That's exactly what she's going to do. Well, we have Terry Moran of ABC News telling Martha Raddatz that it will be a huge reckoning if Mueller does not find Trump collusion with Russia. He says it will be a reckoning for the Democrats and for progressives. And he left out one group there, the media. The media has lived off of the Trump-Russia Mueller investigation. That's why some of them have had pretty good ratings, because their lead story every night is Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Trump-Russia investigation. Once that's over and Uncle Bob does not find anything, number one, their ratings are going to take a hit. Their viewers who have been promised that Trump's going to be taken out by Mueller time, they are going to be completely, well, they'll be very upset. They'll be very angry, and they'll not be so anxious to reach for the dial to turn on these media outlets who spent 2 years telling them to look forward to Trump being taken out by Mueller, only to find it didn't happen. So, yeah, the media is going to be certainly taking a big hit, but they didn't mention that. But Terry Moran is telling Martha Raddatz that it doesn't look like there's going to be any collusion, and there's not, because there wasn't any, and that it's going to be a big reckoning for the Dems and the progressives. And he's saying the reason is because they've cast so much of their, they've cast all their hopes and dreams on Uncle Bob the Executioner to find something. And now they're realizing he's not. And that's why they're launching all these, I understand that there's been like 13, 14, maybe 15 investigations, new investigations opened up into Trump just in the last couple weeks from states attorneys and state prosecutors and people like that. New York, New Jersey, California. They're launching all these investigations into Trump, his businesses, his taxes, his family. It's happening in Congress as well. So now he's just been inundated with all these lawsuits. And that's because they're all have been given the word that Mueller is not going to deliver on Trump-Russia collusion. It's not going to happen. So this is why they've moved on from that and moved on to something else, with the goal being the same, to destroy Trump, to make him unelectable. And yes, it's going to be a reckoning for Democrats and progressives because it's going to suck the wind out of their sails. This is what it's this whole thing that's kept the left really motivated, believing that Trump is going to be taken out by Mueller. And now that that's over, they have to somehow try to keep that enthusiasm going, and it's going to be very hard to do. That's why they're launching all these investigations, is to keep the enthusiasm and the hopes up of all the people on the left that they're going to find some way to take Trump out. And even if they can't take Trump out, they can politically damage him enough that they believe they can make him unelectable. Of course, I think that they're going to fail at that as well. I think this is all going to backfire on them because people, quite honestly, they get sick of these types of things. After a while, they just get sick of it, and it begins to look just like a witch hunt. And that's exactly what it is. And so it'll ultimately end up backfiring, I do believe. So Terry Moran is right. Then we've got Ocasio-Cortez, Marty Feldman I's comrade Cortez, speaking at the South by Southwest conference, saying that, quote, where we are as Americans amounts to garbage. Where we are as Americans amounts to garbage. I'm not even sure what she means by that. I read the whole story, and even in context, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you can make that what you will, but still, it's a not a good sounding soundbite to have associated with yourself. I wouldn't want that associated with me. That's not good, because it sounds like what you're saying is Americans are garbage. It's kind of what it sounds like. Not good. Not a good selection of words, and I'm not even sure what the hell she meant by that, but not good. But she wasn't done there. She says that her democratic socialism actually represents America's core values. America's core values. America's core values are not rooted in democratic socialism. I believe our values are rooted in capitalism and rugged individualism. Rugged individualism, not collectivism. I'm not sure what core values or what America she's talking about. Maybe she's talking about South America. Maybe she's in the wrong America. Cortez believes she's in South America, but she's actually in North America. Because if you go to South America, you could say that their core values are socialism. But in North America, our core values are pretty much capitalism and individualism, not collectivism. So I think this is the whole problem, maybe. Cortez is just confused. She's in the wrong part of the hemisphere. That's the problem. She's in the wrong part of the hemisphere. Someone needs to give her a bus ticket south, and then she'll fit right in. She also trashed Ronald Reagan. She says Reagan used certain rhetoric to pit white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans, and that he talked about welfare queens. Well, everyone did better under Reagan. Everyone's lives economically improved under Reagan, including the black and Latino communities. The fact is, I think she was probably not even born when Reagan was out of office. My guess is, or pretty close to about the same time, he was either probably, well, she was a child. If she was even born, she was very, very, very young, probably 1, 2, 3 years old by the time he's leaving office. So she wouldn't even remember the Reagan years. Now, I remember the Reagan years, and if Reagan was so bad, Commie Cortez, then how is it possible that he won in a huge landslide in his first election and then won an even bigger landslide in his second election? It took a hell of a lot of Democratic votes for him to win 49 states. Commie Cortez. How's that possible? If he was such a bad president, then why did he win 2 big-time landslide elections, and he won bigger in the second one than he did the first one? When you get reelected with a much larger number than even the first time you were elected, that tells you that people liked your policies. And when you look at the size of the landslide he won by in his reelection in '84, he clearly had to get a lot of Democrat votes in a lot of Democrat areas of the country. And it was the blue dog Democrats in Congress that largely was the reason he was able to get a lot of his agenda done, because he appealed to a lot of blue-collar Democrats. He surely did. The very people that Commie Cortez claims to be the leader of are the very people that voted in huge numbers for Reagan. So, again, proving that she's an idiot. Now, many of you are old enough, you're about my age or maybe a little older, you remember the same thing. But Commie Cortez was likely not even born after Reagan had already left office, or she was very, very young. Proving again that she's in the wrong, on the wrong side of the hemisphere here. She should be in Colombia, or she should be in Mexico, or she should be in Venezuela. She should be somewhere well south, of where we are. She's just in the wrong hemisphere, the wrong American hemisphere. She thinks she's in South America, but she's actually in North America. So really, her problem is she just needs a compass and a bus ticket. Let's see. Finally, Trump has hit back at Ann Coulter. I've been waiting for this. He's been ignoring her for the longest time. I pretty much try to ignore her. I don't like the woman at all. But she's been on his ass now for months and months and months. And finally, he came out and got her on Twitter on Friday. I think it was Friday. And he said, described her basically as a wacky nut job. And explained to her that he is building the border wall. It's going up every day. More and more and more miles of border wall are going up every day. He's building the border wall. He's getting it done. And that Ann Coulter is a wacky nut job. That's correct. Well, we had Margaret Brennan from, I guess, what, she's on MSNBC or ABC or NBC. Face the Nation. Deface the Nation is CBS, I believe. Yeah, so Margaret Brennan, the host of Deface the Nation, has Andy McCabe. Yes, he's still out peddling that book of lies he's got. And so she's got Andy McCabe on her show. And again, just like his last interview, they never say a single word about the fact that he was fired, recommended by the FBI's Office of Professional Accountability. The fact that the IG recommended that he be... they sent criminal referrals for him lying 3 or 4 times to the FBI, to the Congress, to the Inspector General. So he's proven to have lied. Never ask him about any of this. They just bring him on the show and treat him as if he's this totally stellar character, completely above reproach. Talk nothing about his actual circumstances. They never question him about his decision on the dossier. They never question him about the new revelations we learned from Bruce Orr. They never question him about any of these things. Just a total softball interview. Just to let him sit there and get jabs in at Trump. So, first thing to ask him about is Manafort. And McCabe doesn't think that Manafort got enough time. Well, I don't know how much time you expected that he would get, Andy, but you're looking at possible treason, or at the very least, insubordination or something far worse than anything Manafort did. You tried to, you used a piece of garbage, which you knew was garbage, fake intelligence. You signed off on FISA warrants. You launched investigations to take down a presidential candidate using political opposition research, which was essentially a smear campaign. You used a smear campaign by a media hack to do all these illegal things, which in my mind amount to treason. And I'm pretty sure that the penalty for something like that is probably much greater than any penalty Manafort could have been facing. So I don't know how much time you get for running a coup, but maybe we need to look into that. That's what I would have asked Andy. I would have said, Andy, how much time, you don't think Manafort got enough time in jail. How much time do you think someone should get in jail if they've been part of a coup? He also describes Trump's public comments as being one of the reasons they opened up the investigation, and he says it's basically witness tampering. Now, I remember when Bill Clinton was under investigation by Ken Starr, and he used to use the term, it's a witch hunt daily. Every single day, Clinton was out there, along with his disciples, describing Ken Starr as being on a witch hunt. I never heard any of the left-wing media talking about witness tampering then. The president's perfectly free to describe these investigations any way he wishes, just as Clinton did. Trump's doing just the same. And they were both right. They were both witch hunts. He says he's still not sure if Manafort is a Russian agent. And he's still not sure if Trump's a Russian agent or was colluding with the Russians either. It shows you how dumb this guy is. But he's not really that dumb. He's lying. Because they're in a real pickle. They used a smear campaign paid for by the opposition candidate to try to run a coup. And that's a bad deal when you get caught. It didn't work out. Trump was supposed to lose. Hillary was supposed to win. But that didn't happen. And so they had to try to cover their tracks. But now it's all coming out. And he's doing the only thing he can do. They have got to stick to the dossier because, as we now know, that's all they had. They have to try to somehow stick to the dossier. But ultimately, it's going to come down to it, and they're simply not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to be to sell that forever, because ultimately it's going to be very difficult to convince the majority of people that so many people at the highest levels of the FBI, the DOJ, the intelligence divisions, that all these people could have been duped by the dossier. And when they find out that there was really no attempt to even verify the dossier, that'll be even worse. And that's what Lindsey Graham has subpoenaed. So Lindsey Graham has subpoenaed all the documents that would show what actions they took to try to verify the dossier. And he's going to find out there are none. Because they didn't attempt to verify the dossier because they knew it was garbage. I mean, why would they try to prove the dossier when they knew it was garbage? They wouldn't waste their time. They knew there was nothing to prove. But they went ahead and used it anyway. That's why they're in a lot of trouble. Then she refers to McCabe as an investigator. Right. He couldn't even figure out what a sixth grader could. The very first time that I read through the dossier, I said I could not believe they actually took this thing seriously. It was like comical. I read it right here on TowerGate. I read the damn dossier right here. I broke it down paragraph by paragraph, went through it with you. And anyone who's read through the dossier can see clearly that you could never pass this off as a piece of serious intelligence. It read like a piece of just slanderous something. It read almost like something you'd see like in the Globe or you know, the National Enquirer or something like that. I mean, it read like something crazy like that. It's nothing like what you would see in a serious intelligence document. They never were able to verify or even tried to verify steal sources. it's simply not going to sell. They can go out there and they can try all they want, but ultimately, when it finds itself into a court of law, when it finds itself in front of a federal grand jury with a real prosecutor, you are not going to be able to convince a jury that all these top-level intelligence people and investigators and all these people in the intelligence community were duped. They weren't duped, and you're not going to be able to sell that. You might, if maybe just a couple people were duped, that'd be one thing, but you can't tell me that the counterintelligence, intelligence, top of the FBI, lawyers, all these people, that they were all duped. When in fact they knew that the dossier was paid for by opposition research candidate. They knew that it was, slander and lies. They couldn't verify and didn't try to verify any of it. They knew it was garbage. They're not going to be able to prove that they even tried to prove something otherwise. It's just not going to fly. So they can go ahead and have their fun out in the court of public opinion. Maybe McCabe will sell some books to help him meet his legal fees, but ultimately he is going to end up probably with more jail time than Manafort, and he better. McCabe says he does not recall the meeting about the insurance policy. Well, maybe he's taking the same medication Loretta Lynch is taking. She can't recall anything either. It's hard for me to believe that you're having a conversation like the insurance policy, removing the president, and you can't remember that conversation. Seems like that would have been a pretty important meeting. But he says, oh, well, I was having all kinds of meetings with Strzok and Page, and we were meeting here and meeting there and talking about this and talking about that. So I guess I can't remember that meeting. I'm pretty sure that, he might have taken some notes on that. Remember, he was taking notes too, just like Comey. Did he take any notes on the insurance policy meeting? Apparently not. Apparently it wasn't an important enough conversation. He even remembers it. Bullshit. Another lie. Another lie by McCabe. And then, of course, Margaret Brennan did mention to him that Lindsey Graham has just started a new investigation and that he's talking about calling McCabe in. And, of course, McCabe simply dodged the question, just didn't answer it. He talked around the question and went on to something else, babbled around it. He doesn't want to talk about that. And I certainly hope that Lindsey Graham does open hearings. Open hearings. These closed hearings are bullshit. There's no reason for a closed hearing. There's nothing that they're going to discuss which has anything to do with actual intelligence. This had nothing to do with any actual intelligence. And if there's sources and methods and spies that are outed, tough. They should be outed. They were participating in a coup. They absolutely should be outed. Whether it's Halper or Downer or Misfit or any of these guys need to be outed. This all should be done in open hearings, not closed hearings. There's nothing of any intelligence value here. It was all a bunch of garbage. But here's a new one that I haven't heard McCabe say before. He's saying that he was advised by the Department of Justice to open the investigation. That's the first time I've heard him say that. He was advised by the Department of Justice to open the investigation. I wonder what they'll have to say about that. And who would that have been? There's only two people who would have been his superiors. Well, that would be Sally Yates, silly Sally Yates, would have been kind of a supervisor. She was the number 2 at DOJ. He was the number 2 at FBI. But he was the acting FBI director for a while. And Loretta Lynch. So if he's saying that the DOJ is the ones that were telling him he needed to open up the investigation, there could only be 2 people that would have been able to have the authority, other than the president himself, to advise McCabe that he needed to open up these investigations. That would have been Yates or Lynch. Which one was it? I'm sure Lindsey Graham will be asking that question if he's aware of this comment. And we had this crazy story pop up in the Daily Beast that says that they have a DOJ document showing that Trump ordered Sessions to investigate Uranium One. And the Daily Beast says that they have a letter that proves that Sessions directed John Huber to investigate. And apparently a DOJ spokesman responding to this says that Huber's review is still underway. So I don't know whether to believe this or not. Maybe. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the president can certainly order his attorney general to investigate certain things. That's one of the privileges of being the president. If you see something you think's wrong, and it doesn't matter if it's your former opponent in a campaign or whatever, And he wasn't necessarily talking anything about Hillary so much, just the uranium deal in general needed to be investigated. I think that's where he was going with that. That would fall probably more on Obama than it would on Hillary. She was involved, but that was a decision ultimately made by his administration. So I don't know if there's any truth to this story or not, but it's not a big deal. I mean, it's not a violation. The president can certainly order investigations. But even if this is all true, it doesn't look like to me that Huber has done a damn thing. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to get your votes in for Dumbass of the Week, and we'll name the winners tomorrow. You guys have a good night. See ya. Bye.